Picture this. You wake up on a Tuesday morning, and the first thought that enters your head is not an alarm, not a meeting, not a manager's name, not a deadline. The first thought is nothing. Just the slow, comfortable awareness that you are awake, that the day ahead belongs entirely to you, and that absolutely nobody on earth is waiting for you to show up somewhere and perform. There is no version of this moment that involves panic. There is no mental calculation happening in the background about whether you can afford to take a day off, or whether your boss will notice you came in late, or whether the rent is going to clear this month. The numbers are fine. The numbers have been fine for a while now. And the strangest part, the part that nobody who hasn't lived it can quite believe until they're inside it, is that you almost don't know what to do with that. Because here's the thing about financial freedom that the internet gets completely wrong. Every article, every YouTube thumbnail, every finance influencer standing in front of a rented Lamborghini will tell you that financial freedom is about the stuff, the travel, the watches, the first-class flights, the beachfront properties, the life that looks incredible from the outside and is presumably incredible from the inside too. And yes, some of that is real. But the actual experience of financial freedom, the thing that hits you in the chest on a random Tuesday morning when you realize you don't have to go anywhere, has almost nothing to do with things you can photograph. It's about something much quieter and much more profound than that. It's about the complete and total elimination of a specific kind of fear that most people carry so constantly they don't even recognize it as fear anymore. They just think that's what being alive feels like. Think about how much of your mental energy, right now, today, is quietly occupied by money. Not in an obvious, dramatic way, not necessarily the kind of financial stress that keeps you awake at 3 in the morning, though that's real too, and we'll get to it, but the lower-level background hum of financial anxiety that colors almost every decision you make without you fully realizing it. You want to quit your job, but you can't because the health insurance is attached to it. You want to take a month off, but you can't because a month without income means a month of savings disappearing, and savings feel too precarious to touch. You want to say no to a project you hate, or a client who disrespects you, or a manager who makes your life smaller every single day you work for them, but you can't because saying no has a financial consequence you're not positioned to absorb. Most people spend their entire working lives making decisions not based on what they actually want, but based on what they can afford to choose. And the gap between those two things is where so much quiet misery lives. Financial freedom is the moment that gap closes. It's the moment the answer to, can I afford to say no, becomes yes, always, without calculation, without dread. Getting there, though, that's the part the thumbnails skip entirely. Because financial freedom is not an event. It's not a lottery ticket. It's not an inheritance. It's not a startup exit that happens to you like weather. For most people who actually reach it, financial freedom is the result of years of decisions that are genuinely, consistently unglamorous. It's the years you lived in the apartment that was fine but not impressive, while your peers were upgrading to places that looked better on Instagram. It's the car you drove for 11 years because it worked, and because the money you didn't spend on a new one was going somewhere more important. It's the dinner parties where you ordered the second cheapest bottle of wine and felt vaguely embarrassed about it and did it anyway. It's the discipline of paying yourself first, month after month, before the lifestyle creep could get to the money, before the subscriptions and the upgrades and the small luxuries that feel insignificant individually and add up to an enormous sum collectively. It's boring. It is genuinely, relentlessly, unglamorously boring. And it works. The number itself is different for everyone, and this is one of the most important things to understand about financial freedom, because the internet has a bad habit of making it sound like a fixed destination. $1 million, $4 million, some magic figure that flips a switch and changes everything. But financial freedom isn't a number. It's a ratio. It's the point at which your passive income, the money your money makes while you sleep, exceeds your expenses by enough margin that working becomes optional rather than mandatory. For some people, that's $3,000 a month and a modest life in a low-cost city and a genuine sense of abundance and ease. For others, it requires significantly more because their life costs more and their definition of enough is wider, and neither of those things is wrong.
The dangerous myth is that financial freedom belongs to a category of person you are not, the ones born into money, the ones who got lucky, the ones whose circumstances made it easy. The reality, uncomfortable and empowering in equal measure, is that for a very large number of people, financial freedom is available, and the primary obstacle is not income, but the relationship between income and spending, which is a relationship you have more control over than it sometimes feels like you do.
But let's talk about what it actually feels like once you're there, because this is the part that genuinely surprises people. The first thing you notice is not euphoria. It's not the movie version where you're standing on a cliff somewhere with wind in your hair feeling invincible and free. The first thing you notice is the absence of something. A low-grade tension you had been carrying for so long it had become part of your physical baseline. The slight tightening in your chest when you checked your bank balance, the small jolt of anxiety every time an unexpected expense appeared, the background calculation that ran automatically whenever you considered spending money on anything, all of that just quietly stops. And the silence, where that noise used to be, takes some getting used to, genuinely. Your nervous system has been calibrated to a certain level of financial threat for years, possibly for your entire adult life. And when the threat dissolves, the system doesn't immediately recalibrate. You keep waiting for the other shoe to drop. You keep checking the accounts more than you need to. You keep instinctively ordering the cheaper thing on the menu, even though the price difference no longer matters. The habits of scarcity take longer to leave than the scarcity itself. Then, slowly, something else arrives. And this is the part that nobody talks about enough, the part that makes financial freedom genuinely transformative rather than just financially convenient. You start noticing what you actually want. Not what you think you should want, not what looks impressive, not what would make a good answer to the question, "What are you working on lately?" but what you, specifically, with your particular and weird and individual set of interests and values and quiet obsessions, actually want to do with your time on this planet. For most people, this takes a while to figure out because the wanting has been so thoroughly buried under the needing for so long. You spent years making choices based on what was financially available to you. And somewhere in that process, you stopped asking the deeper question of what you would choose if availability wasn't the constraint. Financial freedom gives you that question back. And answering it honestly, discovering who you are when money stops being the primary organizing principle of your days, turns out to be one of the most interesting and occasionally disorienting journeys a person can take. Some people discover they actually loved the work they were doing, and they keep doing it, but differently now, with more selectivity, more boundaries, more willingness to say no to the parts that were never good, and yes, only to the parts that genuinely light something up in them. Some people discover that what they wanted all along was something quieter, slower, more local. Time with their kids, a garden, long meals with people they love. A life that doesn't make for an interesting LinkedIn profile and doesn't need to. Some people dive into creative work they'd been postponing for their whole adult lives, finally writing the book or making the music or building the thing that had been waiting patiently in the background while the paying work consumed the foreground. The specific answer is different for everyone, and the discovering of it is messy and nonlinear, and sometimes you choose the wrong thing first and have to course correct. But you get to do that. You get to choose, and then choose again, and the cost of the wrong choice is just time rather than financial catastrophe, and that changes everything about how willing you are to try.
There's a shadow side to all of this that honesty requires acknowledging, because financial freedom doesn't solve everything, and pretending otherwise is its own kind of dishonesty. Purpose, it turns out, is not something money provides. It has to be constructed actively and intentionally, and some people find themselves financially free and unexpectedly adrift, without the structure that work imposed and without a clear sense of what they're moving toward. Identity is a real issue, too, particularly for people who spent years building a professional self that was tightly bound to a job title or an industry or a level of achievement, and who discover that without the job, the self feels strangely undefined. Relationships can shift in ways you don't anticipate because money is woven into social dynamics in ways that only become visible when your relationship to it changes dramatically and some of the people around you have not changed along with you. None of these things are reasons not to pursue financial freedom. They are reasons to pursue it with clear eyes and some thought given in advance to the question of what you're building toward, not just what you're building away from, because that's the real thing. Financial freedom is not a destination where you arrive and everything is solved and the credits roll and your life becomes an unbroken sequence of beautiful mornings and meaningful afternoons. It's a foundation. The most solid, liberating, profoundly important foundation you can build under a life, one that removes an enormous category of constraint and gives you back the rarest resource there is, which is not money, which is time, and specifically the time to figure out what matters to you and then actually spend your life doing it. Most people never get that. Most people spend their entire lives exchanging their time for the money required to fund the life they're living, on a treadmill that moves fast enough to feel like progress without actually covering ground. Getting off that treadmill is the thing. Whatever it costs you in discipline and delayed gratification and boring Tuesday nights making transfers into index funds while other people are doing more exciting things, whatever it costs, it is worth it. Not because of what you'll buy when you get there, because of what you'll finally, after all of it, be free to become.